Welcome to the final showdown of the series. 12 feats and 2 semi-finals later, and we're finally here. Robot Wars, the Grand Finals. As we went through every battle getting to this moment, we saw some of the biggest amounts of carnage and destruction that's been on the show so far. We also saw some of the most unique range of machines that have taken part in the Warzone. Later on, we'll be commemorating some of these machines along with others that have made this series a chaotic mess that it's been, which we're all thankful for. But for right now, for those of you that missed the few episodes, you'd best relive the road to Armageddon. 108 machines came and took part in the series, making it one of the most chaotic series we've had so far, all coming from a wider range of designs and weaponry while providing some of the most spectacular fights we've seen. And now we're down to only 4 machines, so before we head down to the Warzone for the finals, let's review the story so far! Heat 1 welcomed back reigning champions 259 who got blasted out of the arena in their very first fight of the night by the newcomers Wheels. They made a comeback, however, in the Silver Rumble despite taking damage from Die, but they still managed to send Die down the pit as well as Dominator 2 before entering the Death or Glory, where they watched 24th Seed's Exterminator fall down into the pit before throwing another Sentinel down, and then ending up down the pit themselves. And the reigning champions were out. The Heat final saw 2 newcomers fighting for the first spot of the semis, with Wheels trying their hardest to claim it, but ended up being flipped out of the arena, and it was Siege who became our first semi-finalist. Endgame returned in Heat 2 with a major worry as a cheeky attack from Cut It Out saw them on fire and their weapon completely dead as Blacksmith first pitted them down the pit before almost having Endgame beaten and dead, until they then drove down the pit themselves. We were looking forward to having our first walkabout on Robot Wars, but mechanical problems caused Chomp to have to forfeit from the Heat. A substitute in the form of Surf's Up from Australia took their place, who managed to flip themselves out of the pit before ending up back down to join Nuts, but threw out Blacksmith in the Silver Rumble in very quick time. Endgame managed to bring it back by eliminating both Beast and Mantis in very quick succession by sending them out of the arena, before Mantis came back for revenge in the Heat final, but sadly were no match for the 3rd Seeds who simply slammed them out of the arena again and went through to the semis. 5th Siege of Eterna were back in Heat 3 and presented their dominance as they blasted Bigger Brother out of the arena before trying to do the same thing to Cage, but they weren't able to pull it off, and so they had to settle for dumping them down the pit. Behemoth were back, new and improved, as they helped dispatch off Blip with Backwhacker, before finally dealing with them after losing the lip of their lifting scoop. They made the Gold Rumble, where they then faced off against the very dangerous Yovaturno and Chinook, who completely ripped off their weapon and then got stranded on the wall. Yovaturno helped them out, however, after watching Chinook get counted out, and Behemoth decided the only smart move they could really do was to drive down the pit and save themselves from any further damage. They ended up losing their bucket again though to Chinook in the Death or Glory before one big collision saw Behemoth fall down the pit, just as Chinook went out the arena. The Heat finally became a vengeance fight as Bigger Brother fought mercilessly against Yovaturno and managed to get underneath them very well, and even used their weapons to sort of clamper. But the finishing blow came from Yovaturno trying to get away and spin into the pit by mistake, which Bigger Brother rectified by flipping them out, but they were deemed eliminated, and Bigger Brother went through to the semis. The Snowstorm team from the last wars were back with a new machine Firestorm in Heat 4, and despite coming back with the Stream Mech, it didn't prove to be all that helpful as New Boy's Choking Hazard bullied them around and even got Decapitator out of the arena. But the end came when Firestorm stood motionless by the pit when they should have stayed moving, which Choking Hazard used to their advantage and threw them down the pit. But the Silver Rumble would be as far as they'd go, as a rear assault from Smitzy caused Firestorm to get completely beached on the arena wall with no way down, and were counted out, and then Advanced Mimic ended up going the same way after a very dominant display from the returning Lifting Rambot, who made another Death or Glory. But the Heat final saw newcomers Choking Hazard taking on Sign of the Cross, who previously fought as Broadsword in a very good Heat final clash as Choking Hazard slammed them around the arena, who seemed to be having drive issues, before one final push sent them down and out, and Choking Hazard became the second newbies into the semi-finals. Great to see Barricade back in Heat 5 as they tangled with 2 newcomers, Disco Inferno and High AF, who seemed to seriously damage each other as they were both left on fire and immobilized. A rather easy victory for Barricade. Cobalt were also back better improved as they ripped Flowerbed apart before then dealing with Expulsion, who seemed to just take themselves out in the end. Manta were also back with a new machine Earthquake as they took on newcomers Pressure and 16th Siege Bite Force, and although Earthquake took some damage and lost drive on one side, Pressure and Bite Force lost drive altogether, leaving them to go through to the Gold Rumble, where they seemed very effective as they overturned Barricade a few times, but couldn't quite deal with the Blade of Cobalt, which caused Earthquake to come to a halt, and Barricade ended up stuck on top with no way of moving forward. But Earthquake weren't going to let it end here. They flipped Bite Force onto their side where they couldn't get away from and became immobilized, and then dispatched off High AF and Barricade, who seemed like they were going to take each other out. Earthquake just lent a helping hand before finally throwing Bite Force out of the arena. The Heat Final was a very good tussle between Cobalt and Earthquake, with Cobalt being more dominant and controlling, before a poor driving error saw one of their wedge studs drop them into the pit and catching them out, resulting in Earthquake getting vengeance and managing to make it through to the semi-finals. In Heat 6, P1 watched Bullfrog throw out Silver Space before then getting bullied by the newcomers until they came to a halt and ran out of CO2, leaving P1 free to just drop them down and out. Mecha Grizzly laid up and over and motionless as Gnome 2 tried to push them down and out, which got interrupted by Angry, who got behind them and pushed them down the pit instead, with Angry taking that Gold Rumble spot. They then met P1 and Biohazard, where P1 came to a sudden halt and were counted out, before then pinning Biohazard on the wall using their own 4-bar lifter and made their way into the Heat Finals. P1 still had a chance to make a comeback, unlike B2 who threw themselves down the pit, and then for some reason decided to join them, and so did Biohazard. A very good strong Heat Final then came as Angry took on Silver Spacer and their powerful flipper, but as powerful as it was, they kept mistiming it, which helped Angry gain an upper hand, before eventually throwing them out of the arena and going through to the semis. Great seeing M2 back in Heat 7 as they first watched Buzzy B wrap off Cobra and land on their side before finishing them off with a single flip, and then did the same thing to Cobra. The Big Spinner team were also back with a new machine similar in design but actually worked and was very effective as it sent both newcomers Pussycat and Bunjar flying out of the arena, before then suddenly doing it to themselves on the Gold Rumble against M2 and Dan Tomkia, who got flipped out by M2 just as Dodge Me landed out of the arena. And then even more bizarrely, the same thing happened when they collided with the top of Buzzy B, before Dan Tomkia got them stuck on the wall with no way back, and with them firing the weapon, and ending up like that, somehow. The Heat Final was a grudge match, but it didn't last long as M2 only managed to get one flip of Dan Tomkia before they got around and threw M2 out of the arena, resulting in them losing the Heat Final again, and Dan Tomkia making the semis. 13 Black returned in Heat 8, but didn't really seem to live up to the 10th seeding as they got battered by Picard Destroy, who fought in the last walls crippling Kabutops, far superior as they also crippled Complete Control, who then came face to face with heavyweights Tricerabot and Huge, with Tricerabot losing their face but still managing to remain aggressive, before a combination of a lift from the middleweight and a couple attacks from the bar of Huge saw Tricerabot driving down the pit with Huge following them. But Complete Control weren't happy with that and dragged them back out, before pulling off an amazing feat by lifting them up and throwing them out of the arena. They then managed to topple over Hydra in the Death or Glory as 13 Black got counted out, while Slinky the Sea Monster tried to be in the fight despite the major drive issue of only having one wheel, which was very bizarre for us, and even more bizarre that it managed to get to the Death or Glory in the first place. But then Hydra ended up reversing down into the pit foolishly, and then Slinky the Sea Monster ended up doing the same thing before Complete Control sent 13 Black down to join them. The Heat Final then became one of the more brutal ones as Picard Destroy ripped away a wheel and even managed to send Complete Control up and over. They then righted them by tearing away the clamping weapon on top and then disabled the drive, with Picard Destroy going through and nearly pitting themselves. The Razor team were back in Heat 9, as well as the Amweight Anarchy legend Nexus, who first dispatched Volta before having a real good tussle with each other. Nexus managed to get a very good flip on Razor, but then became stuck on the ankle grinder and couldn't get away, and went to the judges, and they went with Razor. Nexus, after feeling cheated, fought harder in the Silver Rumble by almost throwing out TR2, before Chronic 2 showed up and took out a wheel, before then taking out the entire drive system of Nexus, as TR2 self-righted out of the arena, as Chronic 2 went through, despite being stuck on the backside. Razor then tried being very careful as not to take major damage from the weapons of both Windgrow and the Alien, but Windgrow wasn't even moving, which made it rather easy for Razor to throw them down the pit, and then the Alien threw themselves down the pit for some reason. Chronic 2 then got a very good flip on the Alien, which set them on fire before they ended up on their back again, which Volta took advantage of and slammed the blade into the underbelly and set them on fire, before nudging them down the pit. Meanwhile, Windgrow, while actually moving this time, didn't seem to be getting involved in the action, and Vulture then took serious damage as they lost the wheel. But they managed to still move with some control and slam Windgrow up and over, before slamming them with their blade and making the heat final. It seemed like it could have been a rather interesting one as well between Racer and Vulture, but a poor driving error from Vulture saw them reverse and overbalance into the pit, and Racer saw themselves given a spot in the semifinals. The first fight of Heat 10 was a literal blaze of glory as Roman Empire scorched both Sting and Minotaur with their flamethrowers to no real success, before Sting took them out along with the weapon of Minotaur, and then good drive and pushing power saw Minotaur dropping Sting down the pit and ending up down there themselves. But one of the most improved machines in the series was Antlion, who threw over Spawn again and then completely removed the weapon entirely, and then threw them down the pit to keep Mortis company. Minotaur then felt wrong for going to the Gold Rumble as they felt Sting deserved it more than they did and switched places. Minotaur then watched Counter Revolution drive down the pits as they battered and tore apart Spawn again and showed why they were seeded 6th to begin with. But then a poor driving error saw the flipper of Spawn again do major damage to Minotaur's drive, but thankfully for them, Spawn again were already counted out. Antlion, meanwhile, watched Bulldog Breed flip Sting and set them on fire with no life left in them, before Antlion picked up Bulldog Breed and sent them tumbling out of the arena with a great victory under their belt, before finally dumping Sting down the pit. The Death or Glory saw Minotaur and Tombstone fight each other again, with it going the same way it did in the last wars, but this time Minotaur slammed into the ankle grinder and came to a halt and were counted out. And then Sting got counted out as well, leaving Bulldog Breed to go through to the Heat Final, where they proved to be more dominant against Antlion, who couldn't get an attack in, before Bulldog Breed flipped them behind them and out the arena, and securing themselves a spot in the semis. 4th Seeds Chaos2 wasted no time throwing Destructotron up and over in Heat 11, and they didn't waste any time throwing Jabberwocky over the entry gate and out of the fight. But try as they might, they didn't seem like they could do the same thing to Destructotron and had to settle for dropping them down the pit. A similar story occurred in the Gold Rumble. They managed to throw out the 21st Seed's Volcano Alert, but couldn't quite pull it off against Really Big Cheese. Though this time it was because of the design of the robot and how awkward a design it was, despite trying desperately with some very good flips. But in the end, Really Big Cheese got flipped one more time before driving around and entered the open pit of oblivion. The Death or Glory saw Jabberwocky driving under everyone and throwing over Destructotron with a very good flip, before finally releasing the pit with Volcano Alert resting on top of it, which signaled their exit from the competition, and Really Big Cheese signaled theirs by driving into the pit again. The Heat Final then just became a one-sided fight with Chaos2 flipping them up and over and onto the arena sidewall, before one final flip saw them out, and Chaos2 saw themselves through to the semi-finals. And in our last qualifying heat, the runners-up from the last war, Tsunami, watched Bioluminescence throw out Peach before they then began pressurizing them, and they made a driving error and threw themselves down the pit. 23rd seed, Sub-Zero didn't seem to be struggling at all as they threw out Aegis, and then after hitting the pit release button, threw out the almighty Curse as well. The two seeds clashed in the Gold Rumble, with Sub-Zero throwing Tsunami over and out of the arena, before then having a hard time against Boomitvert. They weren't able to get underneath them as the blade of the flipper had been ripped away, but Boomitvert then died against the sidewall, and Sub-Zero were through to the Heat Final. Bioluminescence then drove themselves down the pit in the Death or Glory, and Boomitvert decided to join them as they got themselves out, only to drive back in, leaving Peach and Tsunami to fight out amongst themselves, with Tsunami taking more of the brunt of the attacks than Peach. And then with one big slam, Peach destroyed Tsunami, leaving them completely on fire, and the only thing left to do was to throw them down and out. The Heat Final didn't really seem to last all that long though, as Sub-Zero got a very good shot on Peach, who nearly went out of the arena but managed to land back inside the walls, before Sub-Zero decided to catapult them out completely and taking that last spot in the semis. So the first semi-finals were up, and Earthquake started it by charging Siege across the floor, trying to throw them out, but didn't seem quite able to. And then all of a sudden, Earthquake came to a complete stop while Siege drove around in a celebratory circle as Earthquake were counted out and immobile. Chaos2 started the stronger as they threw Dantom Gear up and over, but then a lucky shot from the flipper saw Chaos2 no longer moving, and Dantom Gear took advantage and threw them out, and even caught them on fire. Bigger Brother tried to get underneath Razor, but Razor got underneath first and slammed them into the wall, and then down into the open pit. Earthquake then flung Bigger Brother out of the arena in the loser's melee as Chaos2 tried pinning them with their flipper. Didn't work though, and Earthquake then retaliated by getting underneath and flipping them out. Disaster then struck the Siege as their drive didn't seem to be working, and Razor managed to effortlessly drive them onto the flames and then down the pit, bringing their amazing run to a sad end. Meanwhile, Earthquake and Danton Gears seemed to just be dancing around each other. Earthquake had enough and opened the pit, and then flipped Danton Gear into it, who escaped, and then drove into it, bringing their run on the series to a close. Picard Destroyer encountered problems against Angry, who managed to set their weapon on fire and render it useless, before poor Driving saw Angry drive onto the edge of the pit for Picard Destroyer to take advantage of, but missed and went down themselves. Choking Hazard once again showed their dominance against Third Seed's Endgame and even managed to flip them over. But despite Endgame's best efforts to take them down, they ended up against a wall with no drive and were counted out. Sub-Zero only delivered 2 flips to Bulldog Breed. The first sent them onto the wall, the second sent them over it. The losers melee saw Bulldog Breed pressurizing Endgame while not using their flipper, as Picard Destroyer kept coming in and managed to take off the wheels of Endgame, before then getting a very good shot on Bulldog Breed, sending them up and over, and their flipper couldn't right them, and were counted out. A very good game of cat and mouse then ensued with Angry and Choking Hazard. It seemed very even Stevens, but that all changed once the pit was down, and Choking Hazard slid right down it. Picard Destroyer tried their hardest, but it just wasn't enough, as Sub-Zero released the pit with Picard Destroyer on top, and they fell down. So after all that chaos and destruction, we're down to our 4 Grand Finalists. Razor the Crusher, Earthquake the Flipper, Angry the Flipper, and Sub-Zero the Flipper, who's also made a joke out of the seating system. And we'll be seeing our 4 finalists in the arena shortly, but throughout this series, we've seen machines come in unique forms with different ways of causing each other problems in the war zone, with lessons being learned from previous battles. And to show our gratitude for these machines, we have a couple special award nominations. The first award is for the most original entry. So many unique machines have come into fight, with so many looking very interesting, but we had to slice it down into 4 nominations. The first, Buzzy B, a seesaw design which could run both ways up and proved to be fairly difficult to knock out. Pretty difficult to hit, but did have a bit of a habit of beating himself on the arena walls and angle grinders. Huge, a gigantic machine with a very thin body and massive wheels, along with a dangerous spinning bar. Definitely hard to do any real sort of damage to it, and seems rather easy to control. Advanced Mimic, a unique take on a control boat with a closing tooth, chest top, and a flipping tongue. Actually managed to cause some trouble. Shame it didn't go any further. And finally, Surf's Up, the only machine to have entered with a surfboard as a weapon, and a very effective one at that. Great power in the weapon, and quite low to the ground. Pretty quick too. But the winner is Buzzy B! A very unique design. Will we see more designs like it, I wonder? Our next award is the Best Design Award. With so many different designs this series, only 4 really stood out, but only 1 can take it home. Nuts! A rather interesting thwackbot, more like a flarebot than anything. The 2 chains on the side of the ring offer as the weapons. The machine spins on the spot and smacks into anything that collides with them. Unique idea, just not sure if as effective as I think it is. Razor, a great crushing beak with 9 tons of squeeze ability. The self-righting wings are also very useful too, along with the speed. This year definitely gave them a tough fight in my opinion. Flower Bed never actually won its fights, but looked oh so beautiful with the fake flowers on top going from red to pink to white, and the wooden-like structure along with the wheels that could still drive the machine along if the actual wheels ripped away. It's a fairly good contender for this category. And finally, Destructotron, which was armed in almost every weapon that's competed this series. A scoop, a bunch of spikes, a circular saw, an axe, and a lot of ground clearance. Again, made the semi-finals in the World Championships last wars. But the winner is Flower Bed! Absolutely stunning machine, and very beautiful. Next up, the Best Engineered Award. Our nominations, first up, Stinger, with all of its electronics housed inside the wheels, making it an almost very difficult machine to attack. Of course, the wheels are its obvious weak spots, and it's not got a whole lot of control. Crush Station, a very interesting crusher bot with the claws working by the operator wearing a special set of gloves and closing their hands to make the claws close. Very amazing bit of engineering that, and the machine can run both ways up too, just need to work on driving it. Slinky the Sea Monster, a cylindrical design with wedges sticking out of every orifice to snag machines and stop them from getting underneath, with a swinging arm with a spinning blade attached to a 360-degree turret, and all of that while the machine is only running on a single wheel. Barmy mad they are. Still managed to win a fight, somehow. And finally, High AF, a spinning blade attached to a device that can raise itself off the ground. Didn't really get to see the mechanism in action, but the blade is quite dangerous and not something I want to find in my laundry basket, thank you very much. But the winner is... Crush Station! Such an amazing bit of engineering with the weaponry. Could that set the benchmark, I wonder? Our next award is the Sportsmanship Award, with lots of teams lending help and advice, but only a select few went that extra mile. First, Dietor, who didn't do that great this time around, but down in the pits have been helping everyone out and getting their bots in fighting order. Fresher, a machine that claims to be better than Razor, who didn't have a great run of things, but they knew their way around cylinders for weapons and offered to help making sure that they were in top working order before a fight. They definitely earned a lot of respect for that in the pits, I can tell you. Adam Clark and 259 are now former reigning champions, who always managed to take time out of working on his machine and helping other teams with some advice for upcoming fights. A bit cheeky, but nothing wrong with giving a fighting chance. A second award nomination for Surf's Up, who was actually a reserve machine. Chomp was originally meant to compete, but they were forced to withdraw due to mechanical problems, but the Surf's Up team actually tried their best to help get Chomp prepared for the fight so that they could compete in it. That's real sportsmanship, that. And the judges agree with that sentiment. Well done to Surf's Up. True sportsmanship if ever we saw it. Our next award is for the best newcomer, given to a machine new to the Warzone and managed to give quite a performance in the arena. First, Dan Tomkia, who had a very strong CO2 flipper which did see the end of M2 and also beat 4th seed Chaos 2 in the semis. Only had a spot of bother against Earthquake, where they then foolishly drove into the pit of oblivion. Siege, the first newcomer that actually made the semifinals, and had no real struggle whatsoever. A very strong flipper which was actually seen throwing wheels out of the arena twice. And I really love the design of the machine. Complete Control, a middleweight robot with lifting forks and a clamping arm which was very well controlled and controlled their opponents pretty well too, I have to say. But also managed to take a heavyweight machine over to the wall and toss the machine completely over it. A middleweight machine throwing a heavyweight over the arena wall. A massive feat if ever I saw one. And finally, Peach, a small machine with a flipping wedge to help right the robot and a dangerous spinning blade, which caused serious issues to the runners-up of the last wars, and even did this to them. Maybe cute looking, but it's very deadly. But the winner is... Complete Control, and after its impressive feat against Huge, I can't think of a more deserving machine. Our final award is the Skull and Crossbones Award, which goes to a machine that didn't do fantastically this series, or in fact win a fight, but still managed to give a good performance, or at least try to. The first, Firestorm, who was a major shock and surprise to see them crash out as early as they did. The new lifting arm seemed quite effective, too bad it couldn't help them get off the wall Smidsy pinned them against. Nexus, a machine that a lot of us were excited to see and thought it would live up to its endweight counterpart's reputation, but sadly failed to do so. But they did manage to hold their own against Razor, and you can't really take that away from them. 101, a machine that only cost £1 1 pence to build, with a rather sophisticated weapon that gave both the Steel Avenger and Destructotron a good, hard-fought battle. Lost on the judge's decision, but they didn't give up, and it was a very good battle too. And finally, Roman Empire, which was armed with what looked like a dozen flamethrowers and had some serious speed. Looked like a seriously tough contender despite no armor like the last wars with Wigglevert, but sadly, forgot about the pit. But the winner is 101 for an absolutely well-fought battle and going the distance as well as taking the hits and still coming back for more. Well done to all of our nomination winners, but now it's time for the real fight to begin. Our 4 remaining machines have been down in the pits readying themselves for the final push of the series. Only one machine can stand victorious and lift up the trophy. So it's time to head down to the battle board and see how it all plays out. Oh, the chaos that is about to ensue is going to be epic, I can definitely tell you that, with the front hinge flipper of Earthquake up against the rear hinge flipper of Angry. But first up, the two-seater machines, the 8-seat and the crushing beak of Razor, up against the CO2-powered flipper of the 23rd seat Sub-Zero. Let chaos begin! Razor Crusher. Second time in the Grand Finals, and had a very controlled and dominant run of the semis as they dropped Bigger Brother and the Immobile Siege down the pit. The front claw with the 9 tons of squeeze ability being the major help for them in controlling the opposition. But as there are 2 flippers left, if they get flipped, they are going to struggle as their self-righting is slow, and either Angry or Sub-Zero could take serious advantage of that and throw them over the wall. Sub-Zero Flipper. I think this machine is a surprise package, as well as the first ever 23rd seed to ever make a grand final in, well, anything. The flipper definitely helped throw over Bulldog Breed in a fight that didn't really last long, and managed to withstand the spinning attacks of Picard Destroy. Going into this fight, however, I think their drive is going to give them serious problems and allow for easy side-on attacks, especially with Razor, who can use their crushing beak to crunch down on the body and drag them towards the pit. That is, unless their own flipper gets underneath and boots them out.
Robot ears, stand by.
Razor, seed number 8 with the 9 tons of squeeze ability. And seed number 23, Sub-Zero with the CO2 powered flipper.
3, 2, 1.
The first fight of the Grand Finals, and Razor immediately doing circles around Sub-Zero, getting underneath, hitting the pit release button, and Razor so far, oh, nearly down the pit there, good driving to get away from that. Razor now underneath Sub-Zero again, not really able to do much damage. Now they're able to bring in the crushing beak. It is that effective, flung up by Sub-Zero. They landed on the wheels. And Razor, once again underneath, and now Razor trying to crumble into something vital of Sub-Zero. Sub-Zero flipping them away. Razor once again on the attack. Is Sub-Zero now immobilized, I wonder? Razor coming in to see. No, there is still life. Flipped again. So far, this is turning out to be a great opening battle for the Grand Finals. Sub-Zero missing the flip. Razor driving around Sub-Zero, definitely the quicker of the two. Once again, underneath and bringing in that crushing beak. Part bird, part reptile is Razor. Driving underneath once again. Are they able to clamp hold of something vital? No. But Sub-Zero's turn circle is suspect, as I said before. Razor able to take advantage, can get around to the sides, no problem, and bring in the crushing beak to really cause problems for Sub-Zero. Razor once again around the side of Sub-Zero and clamping down that massive beak and driving Sub-Zero, and now, oh, Ratchel's in the pit! Well, how about that? And Sub-Zero falls in with them. But how about that? Razor down the pit and Sub-Zero to the final fight of the night. What a turn up for the books! I definitely didn't see that coming. Razor down the pit, and now they have to go in to fight for third place. Sub-Zero, on the other hand, they go through to the final fight of the night. And who out of these two flippers will be joining them? Will it be the front hinge flipper of Earthquake, or will it be the rear hinge flipper of Angry? Earthquake Flipper. worrying when they broke down against Siege, but they came back to knock out Bigger Brother and Chaos 2 in the Losers Melee before watching Dan Tomkier just throw themselves out. We also got to see the worry they had about their flipping arm when Chaos 2 flipped them over. There are 2 other flippers left in the competition, and they're facing one of them. Let's just hope they're quick enough to get underneath and throw them over and out before it happens to them. Angry Flipper. They did very well in the semis, knocking out Picard, Destroy, Just, and taking out Choking Hazard. The flipper is strong due to the CO2 and the drive is quick. The armor is tough, making it hard to knock out with spinners, as evident in the fight against Picard Destroy, especially after disabling their blade. Looking at them, I think the only real issues they're gonna have is their smaller size compared to the others in the competition. Well, apart from Razor.
Robot ears, stand by.
Earthquake with the front-hinged flipping arm, and Angry with the rear-hinged CO2-powered flipper.
3, 2, 1. Activate.
Our second fight of the Grand Finals, and Earthquake underneath Angry and throwing them up and over, but now Angry managing to get underneath Earthquake, and now firing their weapon, and up and over goes Earthquake, and now Earthquake are in trouble. They're trying to right themselves, but they're stuck on their back, and we were told before they struggle self-righting like that. Angry coming in to take advantage, and now up and over, and Earthquake are gone out the arena, and well done Angry, they go through as they throw themselves over. Brilliant. Well done to Angry though, they go through. What is Angry doing? Circus delay. That. They didn't say the machine could do breakdancing, but Angry through. Well done to them. Commiserations to Earthquake. They have to fight up against the 8 Siege Razor for that 3rd place spot on the podium. Will they acquire it, or will they fall to the crushing beak of Razor and end up down in the pit? Let the 3rd place playoff commence.
Robot ears, stand by.
Earthquake with the front hinged flipping arm, and 8 Siege Razor with the 9 tons of squeezability. This for 3rd and 4th place.
2, 1. Activate.
Who will come out victorious? Earthquake seems to be able to get underneath Razor, but Razor now underneath the front of Earthquake. Earthquake trying to use the flipping arm to get Razor away. Razor, however, bringing in the crushing beak to try and do some damage to Earthquake. Is it working? I don't really think so. They're both quick, and now Earthquake underneath Razor and nearly threw them out the arena. And that's it. Razor's gone out the arena. They're not coming back. Well done, Earthquake. They take home 3rd place. Razor will have to settle for 4th, but bravo to both these machines for getting as far as they have. Very well done indeed. Very impressive for both machines, but it's Earthquake who takes home 3rd place. Well done to them. They get their spot on the podium. But now it's time for the final showdown. The 23rd Siege of Sub-Zero against the Flipper of Angry. Which one of these machines will be crowned the new reigning champions?
Robot ears, stand by.
The Grand Finals. The final fight of the series. Angry with the CO2-powered Flipper. And Sub-Zero, seed number 23 with their own Flipper.
3, 2, 1. Activate.
Sub-Zero has made a mockery of the seedings to make it this far to the final showdown of the Grand Finals with such a low seed, and they're caught on the pit. Sub-Zero can't move. They're free now, trying to get underneath Angry, are unable to do so. I think Angry are struggling to get underneath, and something's happened to Angry. Is that going to be a problem? That will! Out the arena! And a great backflip back onto the wheels for Sub-Zero, who claim the crown as Series 2 reigning champions! Well done to Team Sub-Zero! From seed number 23 to seed number 1! What an impressive story for this machine! From 23rd seed to our new reigning champion, well done Sub-Zero! You have truly earned this victory after such an impressive run. Thank you everyone for watching this series, and we'll be back soon. Launch the fireworks, cue the applause. We've crowned a new champion on Robot Wars. Bye bye.